Okay, so I'm really bored. Like, really bored. No one to talk to. So I'm just gonna read the WCA regulations because I'm that sad, basically. Let's get ready. Let's delete all of the times in this session. And let's go. Drink a Coke for luck. Okay. I don't think I can stat map this. Here we go. Article 1. Officials. A competition must include a WCA delegate and an organisation team consisting of one or more individuals with the following officials: judges, scramblers, and score takers. The organisation team of the competition is responsible for logistics before, during, and after the competition. The WCA delegate may delegate responsibilities to other members of the organisation team, but is ultimately accountable for how these responsibilities are carried out. The WCA delegate for a competition is responsible for reporting to the WCA board regarding adherence to the WCA regulations during the competition, the overall course of the competition, and any incidents. The report must be submitted to the WCA board within 1 week of the end of the competition. Sending the competition results to the WCA results team within 1 week of the end of the competition. All scramble sequences used during the competition must be sent with the results of the competition. All scramble sequences must be labelled with the events, rounds, and groups for which they were used. Sending corrections to the competition results to the WCA results team, advising the other officials where necessary, approving all events and round formats of the competition before the competition starts and if changes are required during the competition, deciding about disqualifying competitors during the competition, providing the scramble sequences, deciding about changes to the scheduled times of rounds. In case of such changes, a clear announcement must be made to all competitors, making a copy of the WCA regulations available at the competition. Each event must have one or more judges. A judge is responsible for executing the procedures of the event. A judge may judge multiple competitors simultaneously at the discretion of the WCA delegate, so long as the judge is able to ensure that all WCA regulations are followed at all times. Every competitor must be available for judging. If required to judge, a competitor may be excused only for a legitimate reason, for example, being unfamiliar with a puzzle at the discretion of the WCA delegate. Penalty is disqualification from the competition. See Regulation 2K. Each event must have one or more scramblers, exception few as move solving. A scrambler applies scramble sequences to prepare puzzles for attempts. Every competitor must be available for scrambling. If required to scramble, a competitor may be excused only for a legitimate reason, for example, being unfamiliar with scramble notation at the discretion of the WCA delegate. Penalty is disqualification from the competition. See Regulation 2K. Each event must have one or more score takers. A score taker is responsible for compiling results. Changes to the result on the score sheet are only permitted at the discretion of the WCA delegate. Competitors in the same round of an event may be divided into groups. Scramblers and judges for a round should not scramble for or judge competitors in their own group before they've finished all of their attempts for the round. They may scramble for and judge competitors in their own group at the discretion of the WCA delegate, but the organisation team must ensure that scramblers and judges cannot see any scramble sequences for their attempts that they have not attempted yet. All officials may compete in the competition. Officials may serve multiple roles, for example, organisation team, WCA delegate, judge, score taker, scrambler. Article 2. Competitors. Any person may compete in a WCA competition if they comply with the WCA regulations, meet the competition requirements, which must be clearly announced before the competition, and are not suspended by the WCA board. Competitors below the age of 18 must obtain consent from their parents or guardians to register and compete. Competitors register by providing all information required by the organisation team, including name, country, date of birth, gender, contact information, and their selected events. A competitor is not eligible to compete without a completed registration as determined by the organisation team. A competitor's name, country, gender, and competition results are considered public information. All other personal information is considered confidential and must not be disclosed to outside organisations/persons without the consent of the competitor. Competitors must represent a country of which they hold citizenship. The WCA delegate should verify citizenship by means of documents, for example, a passport, at their first competition. If a competitor is found ineligible to represent the country with which they have registered, the competitor may be disqualified retroactively and or suspended at the discretion of the WCA board. The eligible countries are defined by the WCA list of recognised countries. Competitors with updates to their citizenship status may change their country of representation before or or at their first competition of a calendar year. Exception: if a competitor loses citizenship of the country which they were previously representing, they must change the country of representation before or at their next competition. Competitors who have no citizenship may compete as stateless. Competitors must obey venue rules and conduct themselves in a considerate manner. Competitors must remain quiet when inside the designated competition area. Talking is permitted but must be kept at a reasonable level and away from competitors who are actively competing. Competitors in the competitors area must not communicate with each other about the scrambled states of the puzzles of the round in progress. Penalty is disqualification of the competitor from the event at the discretion of the WCA delegate. Competitors must be fully dressed within the competition venue. At the discretion of the WCA delegate, competitors may be disqualified from the competition for inappropriate clothing. While competing, competitors must not use electronics or audio equipment, for example cell phones, MP3 players, dictaphones, and additional lighting. Competitors may use non-electronic aids that do not give an unfair advantage at the discretion of the WCA delegate. This includes medical or physical aids worn by the competitor, for example glasses, wrist brace. As an exception to Regulation 2I, medical aids may be electronic if the competitor does not have comfortable non-electronic alternatives, for example if the competitor has a personal hearing aid or pacemaker. Earplugs and earmuffs, but not electronic headphones and earbuds. Competitors may use cameras at the solving station at the discretion of the WCA delegate, but the following restrictions apply from the start of the attempt until the competitor stops the solves. Penalty for breaking a restriction is disqualification of the attempt, DNF. Each camera monitor must be blank or out of the sight of the competitor, Regulation A5B. The competitor must not interact with, for example, operate, hold, or wear any active camera. Exception: the competitor may wear a camera mounted on their head as long as it is out of their sight and it's clear they are not interacting with it, apart from wearing it. The WCA delegate may disqualify a competitor from a specific event. If a competitor is disqualified from an event for any reason, they are not eligible for any more attempts in the event. The results of all remaining attempts in the event are recorded as DNF. If a competitor is disqualified during the course of their event, their earlier results remain valid. Exception: cheating or defrauding. See Regulation 2K2A. At the discretion of the WCA delegate, a competitor may be disqualified from some events, a single event, multiple events, or all events, if the competitor fails to check in or register in time for the competition, is suspected of cheating or defrauding the officials during the competition. The WCA delegate may disqualify any suspected results. Behaves in a way that is unlawful, violent, or indecent, or intentionally damages venue facilities or personal property within the venue, interferes with or distracts others during the competition, fails to abide by the WCA regulations during the competition. A competitor may be disqualified immediately or after a warning depending on the nature and the severity of the infraction. A disqualified competitor is not eligible for the refund of any expenses due to participating in the competition. Competitors may verbally dispute a ruling to the WCA delegates. Disputes are only permitted during the competition within 30 minutes after the disputed incident happened and before the start of any following rounds of the relevant event. The WCA delegate must resolve the dispute before the start of the next round of the event. The competitor must accept all final rulings of the WCA delegate. The penalty is disqualification from the competition. Competitors with disabilities that may prevent them from abiding from one or more WCA regulations may request a special accommodation from the WCA delegate. Competitors requesting such accommodation should contact the organisation team and WCA delegate at least 2 weeks before the competition. Each competitor must be familiar with and understand the WCA regulations before the competition. Competitors must be present and ready to compete when they are called to compete for an event. Penalty is disqualification from the event. Exception: a competitor who is not present in time for an individually scheduled attempt, for example a fewer smooth attempt and multi-blind attempt, may be considered to have declined that attempt, DNS, at the discretion of the WCA delegate. Article 3. Puzzles. Competitors must provide their own puzzles for the competition. Competitors must be ready to submit their puzzles when they are called. See Regulation 2U. Puzzles must be fully operational such that normal scrambling is possible. Polyhedral puzzles must use a color scheme with one unique color per face in the solved state. Each puzzle variation must have moved states and solutions functionally identical to the original puzzle. Puzzles must have color parts which define the color scheme of the puzzle and must be one and only one of the following: colored stickers, colored tiles, colored plastic, or painted/printed colors. All colored parts of a puzzle must be made of a similar material. For competitors with a medically documented visual disability, the following exceptions apply. Blind competitors may use textured puzzles with different textures on each face. Each face should have a distinct color to aid in scrambling and judging. Colorblind competitors who cannot distinguish between the necessary number of colors may use colored parts with patterns if it has been explicitly approved according to Regulation 2S. Patterns may come from stickers or be drawn. The colors of the colored parts must be solid with one uniform color per face. Each color must be clearly distinct from the other colors. Modifications that enhance the basic concept of a puzzle are not permitted. Modified versions of puzzles are permitted only if the modification does not make any additional information available to the competitor, for example, orientation or identity of pieces, compared to an unmodified version of the same puzzle. Pillowed puzzles are permitted. Puzzles whose colored plastic is visible inside the puzzle, e.g. stickless puzzles, are permitted. This does not include the following puzzles: puzzles with transparent parts, exception, an overlay sticker, see Regulation 3L. Any modifications to a puzzle that result in poor performance by a competitor, there are not grounds for additional attempts. For clock custom inserts, the same shape and size as the traditional paper inserts are permitted at the discretion of the WCA delegate. The inserts must have a clear indication of 12 o'clock that matches the original inserts. Puzzles must be clean and not have any markings, elevated pieces, damage, or other differences that distinctly distinguish any piece from a similar piece, exception a logo, see the Regulation 3L. Puzzles are permitted to have reasonable wear at the discretion of the WCA delegate. Definition: two pieces are similar to each other if they are identical in shape and size or mirrored in shape and identical in size. Corrugated/textured parts which permit the orientation of pieces to be distinguished by feel are not permitted for blindfolded events. Puzzles should be approved by the WCA delegate for use in the competition. If a puzzle is found to not be permitted during a round, the competitor must submit a replacement. Penalty for attempts done with not permitted puzzles is disqualification of the attempt. Exception: if a puzzle is found to not be permitted during a round, earlier results may be replaced with an extra attempt at the discretion of the WCA delegate. A puzzle may have a logo on a coloured part. If it does, it must have at most one colour part with a logo. Exception: for blindfolded events, a puzzle must not have a logo. The logo must be placed on a centerpiece. Exceptions for puzzles that do not have centerpieces. For Pyraminx and 2x2x2, the logo may be on any piece. For Square 1, the logo must be on a piece in the equatorial slice. The logo may be embossed, engraved, or consist of an overlay sticker. All brands of puzzles and all puzzle parts are permitted, so long as the puzzles comply with all WCA regulations. Article 4. Scrambling. A scrambler applies scramble sequences to the puzzles. The puzzles must be scrambled using computer-generated random scramble sequences. Generated scramble sequences must not be inspected before the competition and must not be filtered or selected in any way by the WCA delegate. Scramble sequences for a round must be available only to the WCA delegate and the scramblers for the event until the end of the round. Exception: for fewest move solving, competitors receive scrambling sequences during the round. See Article E. Specification for a scramble program. An official scramble sequence must produce a random state from those which require at least 2 moves to solve, equal probabilities for each state. The following additions/exceptions apply. For blindfolded events, the scramble sequence must orient the puzzle randomly, for 2 equal probability for each orientation. 2x2x2 cube, the random state must require at least 4 moves to solve. Cube, the random state must require at least 7 moves to solve. Square 1, the random state must require at least 11 moves to solve. 5x5, 6x6, and 7x7 cube and Megaminx, sufficiently many random moves instead of random state and at least 2 moves to solve. Pyraminx, the random state must require at least 6 moves to solve. For each scramble sequence should be applied during a maximum time frame of 2 hours. This time frame starts when the scramble sequence is applied for the first time. Scrambling orientation. N by N puzzles and Megaminx are scrambled starting with a white face, if not possible, then the lighter face on top, and the green face, if not possible, then the darkest adjacent face on top. Pyraminx is scrambled starting with the yellow face, if not possible, then the lightest face on bottom, and the green face, if not possible, then the darkest adjacent face on the front. Square 1 is scrambled starting with a darker colour on front, out of the 2 possible scrambling orientations. Clock is scrambled starting with either side in front and 12 o'clock pointing up. Cube is scrambled starting with a white face, if not possible, then the lightest face on top, and the green face, if not possible, then the darkest adjacent face on the front left. Competition scramble sequences must be generated using a current official version of the official WCA scramble program available via the WCA website. After scrambling a puzzle, the scrambler must verify that the puzzle is scrambled correctly. If the puzzle state is wrong, the scrambler must correct it, for example by solving the puzzle and then applying the scramble sequence again. Exception: for the 6x6x6, 7x7 cube, and megaminx, it's not necessary to correct the puzzle state at the discretion of the WCA delegate. Cool. Article 5. Puzzle defects. Examples of puzzle defects include pop parts, pieces twisted in place, and detached screws, caps, or stickers. If a puzzle defect occurs during an attempt, the competitor may choose to either repair the defect and continue the attempt, or stop the attempt. If a competitor chooses to repair the puzzle, they must repair only the defective parts. Tools and/or parts of the other puzzles must not be used to repair the original puzzle. Penalty disqualification of the attempt DNF. If any repair to a puzzle must not give the competitor any advantage in solving the puzzle. Penalty disqualification of the attempt DNF. Permits repairs. If any parts have fallen out or moved out of place, the competitor may place them back. If after repairing the puzzle but before the end of the attempt the competitor finds that the puzzle is unsolvable, they may disassemble and reassemble a maximum of 4 pieces to make the puzzle solvable. If the puzzle is unsolvable and can be made solvable by rotating a single corner piece, the competitor may correct the corner piece by twisting it in place without disassembling the puzzle. During the blindfolded phase, see Regulation B4, all repairs must be performed blindfolded. Penalty disqualification of the attempt DNF. If at the end of the attempt some parts of the puzzle are physically detached or not fully placed, the following regulations apply. If one or more parts without color faces is affected, the puzzle is considered solved. If one part with one colored face is affected, the puzzle is considered solved. If more than one part with one colored face is affected, the puzzle is considered unsolved. DNF. If one or more parts with more than one colored face is affected, the puzzle is considered unsolved. DNF. Regulations 5B, 5C, and 5B, 5D supersede 5B, 5A, and 5B, 5B. Article 7. Environment. Spectators must remain at least 1.5 meters away from the solving stations when they are in use. Lighting of the competition area must be given special attention. Lighting should be neutral such that competitors can easily differentiate among the colors of the puzzles. The competition area must be smoke-free. Solving station. Definitions. Stack mat. The speed max stack mat timer and a full-size compatible mat. Mat. The mat of the stack mat. Timer. The timer of the stack mat or a stopwatch for longer attempts. Surface. The flat surface on which the stack mat has been placed. The mat is considered part of the surface. The timer is not considered part of the surface. The stack mat timer must be attached to the mat and placed on the surface, with the timer on the side of the mat nearest to the competitor. Exception for solving with feet, the stack mat must be placed directly on the floor. The timer device may be placed on the side of the mat farthest from the competitor. The competition area must have a competitor's area. The organization team may require that a competitor who has been called to compete must remain within the competitor's area until the competitor has finished all of their attempts for the round. Article 8. Competitions. An official WCA competition must be approved by the WCA board, follow the WCA regulations, have a designated WCA delegate in attendance, be announced on the WCA delegate at least 4 weeks before the start of the competition. Exception in special cases, competitions may be announced by up to 2 weeks before at the discretion of the WCA board. Be publicly accessible. Use the authentic SpeedStack stack mat timer, Generation 2, Generation 3 Pro Timer, or Generation 4 Pro Timer for time measurement. Be open to all who wish to compete. If WCA regulations are not correctly observed during a competition, results may be modified at the discretion of the WCA board. Article 9. Events. The WCA governs competitions for mechanical puzzles that are operated by twisting groups of pieces, commonly known as twisty puzzles. The official events of the WCA are 3x3x3 cube, 2x2x2 cube, 4x4x4 cube, 5x5x5 cube, 3x3x3 one-handed, 3x3x3 with feet, clock, megaminx, pyraminx cube, and square one. Round format for these events is average of 5. For a combined round, the format is best of 2 in the first phase. For the first phase, and average of 5 for the second phase. Exception in special cases, the round format of these can be best of X, where X is 1, 2, or 3 at the discretion of the WCA board. 3x3x3 fewest moves, 6x6x6 cubes, and 7x7x7 cube. Round format for these events are best of X, where X is 1 or 2, and mean of 3. 3x3x3 blindfolded, 4x4x4 blindfolded, 5x5x5 blindfolded, and 3x3x3 multi-blind. Round formats for these events are best of X, where X is 1, 2, or 3. For 3x3x3 blindfolded, the WCA also recognizes mean of 3 rankings and records based on the time from best of 3 rounds. The results of a round are measured as followed. All time results under 10 minutes are measured and truncated to the nearest hundredth of a second. All timed averages and means under 10 minutes are measured and rounded to the nearest hundredth of a second. All timed to results and averages and means over 10 minutes are measured and rounded to the nearest second. For example, x.4 becomes x, x.5 becomes x plus 1. The result of an attempt is recorded as DNF, did not finish, if the attempt is disqualified or unsolved or finished. The result of an attempt is recorded as DNS, did not start, if the competitor is eligible for an attempt but declines it. For best of X rounds, each competitor is allotted X attempts. The best result of these attempts counts for the competitor's ranking in the round. For best of X rounds, a DNF or DNS is the worst possible result. For average of 5 rounds, competitors are allotted 5 attempts. Of these 5 attempts, the best and worst attempts are removed, and the arithmetic mean of the remaining 3 attempts counts for the competitor's ranking in the round. For average of 5 rounds, 1 DNF or DNS is permitted to count as the competitor's worst result of the round. If a competitor has more than 1 DNF and or DNS results in the round, the average result for the round is DNF. For mean of 3 rounds, competitors are allotted 3 attempts. The arithmetic mean of the 3 attempts counts for the competitor's ranking in the round. For mean of 3 rounds, if the competitor has at least 1 DNF or DNS result, their average result for the round is DNF. For best of X rounds, rankings are assessed based on the best result per competitor. The following are used to compare results. For time results, better is defined as the shorter time. For fewest move solving, better is defined as the shorter solution length. For multiple blindfolded solving, rankings are assessed based on the number of puzzles solved minus the number of puzzles not solved, where a greater difference is better. If the difference is less than 0, or if only 1 puzzle is solved, the attempt is considered unsolved, DNF. If competitors achieve the same result, rankings are assessed based on total time, where the shorter recorded time is better. If competitors achieve the same result and the same time, rankings are assessed based on the number of puzzles the competitor fails to solve, where fewer unsolved puzzles is better. For mean of 3 and average of 5 rounds, rankings are assessed based on the ordering of the averages/means of the competitors, where better is the shorter recorded time. For mean of 3 and average of 5 rounds, if 2 or more competitors achieve identical average or mean results, rankings are assessed based on the best attempt per competitor, where better is defined as the shorter time. Competitors who achieve the same result in a round receive an identical ranking for the round. A combined round consists of 2 phases of events, where competitors advance to the second phase if they meet a designated cutoff during the first phase. Whether a competitor proceeds to the next round of combined town must be decided by result. All competitors with a better result than X of the first phase, see Regulation 9F12. Results of official WCA competitions must be listed on the WCA World Rankings. The WCA recognizes the following types of regional records: national records, continental records, and world records. All the results of a round are considered to take place on the last calendar date of the round. If a regional record is broken multiple times on the same calendar date, only the best result is recognized as breaking that regional record. If the WCA regulations for an event are changed, existing regional records stand until they are broken under the new WCA regulations. Each event must be held at most once per competition. All competitors may participate in all events of a competition except in cases specifically approved by the board. Each round must be completed before any following round of the same event starts. Events must have at most 4 rounds. Rounds with 99 or fewer competitors must have at most 2 subsequent rounds. Rounds with 15 or fewer competitors must have at most 1 subsequent round. Rounds with 7 or fewer competitors must have at most 1, and must not have subsequent rounds. Combined rounds count as 1 round when counting the number of rounds per event. If an event has multiple rounds, then at least 25% of competitors must be eliminated between consecutive rounds of the same event. The competitors who advance to the next round must be determined by ranking best X competitors or by result all competitors with a better result than X in the preceding round. For each round, advancement conditions must be announced before the round starts and should not be changed after it has begun. Changes must be made at the discretion of the WCA delegate, who must carefully consider the fairness of the change. If a qualifying competitor withdraws from a round, they may be replaced by the best-ranked non-qualifying competitor from the preceding round. Each round of each event must have a time limit, see Regulation A1A. Article 10. Solved state. Solved state. 10b. Only the resting state of the competition. Only the resting state of the puzzle after the time has been solved is considered. The puzzle may be in any orientation at the end of the attempt. All parts of the puzzle must be physically attached to the puzzle and fully placed in the required positions, exception see Regulation 5b5. A puzzle is solved when all colored parts are reassembled and all parts are aligned within the limits specified below. For each 2 adjacent parts, for example 2 parallel adjacent slices of cube of the puzzle that are misaligned more than the limit described in Regulation 10F, the puzzle is considered to require 1 additional move to solve. See outer block term metric in Article 12. If no further moves are required to bring the puzzle to its solved state, the puzzle is considered solved without penalty. If 1 move is required, the puzzle is considered solved with a time penalty plus 2 seconds. If More than one move is required. The puzzle is considered unsolved. DNF. Limits of acceptable misalignment for puzzles. N by N puzzles at most 45 degrees. Megamix at most 36 degrees. Pyramix and Cube at most 60 degrees. Square one at most 45 degrees U or D, or 90 degrees on the slice. Puzzles not specified in this article are judged according to the solved state as defined by the generally accepted goal of the puzzle. The solved state of clock is achieved when all 18 inner clock faces point to 12 o'clock. Article 11. Incidents. Incidents include incorrect execution of event procedures by officials or competitors, interference or facility interruptions, for example, power failure, emergency alarm activation, equipment malfunction. If an incident occurs, the WCA delegate determines an impartial and appropriate course of action. If the WCA regulations are not fully clear or the incident is not covered by the WCA regulations, then the WCA delegate must make a decision based on fair sportsmanship. Also see Regulation 11E3. If an incident occurs during an attempt, the WCA delegate may grant a competitor an extra attempt, replacing the attempt during which the incident occurred. The competitor must appeal verbally or in writing to the judge and WCA delegate at the time of the incident before finishing the original attempt to be eligible for an extra attempt. An appeal does not guarantee the competitor an extra attempt. If the competitor is granted an extra attempt, the extra attempt must be scrambled using a different scramble sequence. This scramble sequence must be generated using a current official version of an official WCA delegate program. See Regulation 4F. If a competitor is granted an extra attempt, the extra attempt should be done right after the attempt that caused it and must replace the original regularly numbered attempt. If it is unclear whether an incident should result in an extra attempt, the competitor may be granted a provisional extra attempt that will be used only if it is later found that an extra attempt wasn't appropriate, for example by the decision of the WRC. Decisions about an incident may be supported with video or photographic evidence analysis at the discretion of the WCA delegate. Article 12. Notation. Notation for all N by N puzzles. Face move clockwise 90 degrees. F front face, B back face, R right face, L face, U upper face, D bottom face. Counterclockwise 90 degrees. F prime, B prime, R prime, L prime, U prime, D prime. 180 degrees. F2, B2, R2, L2, U2, D2. Outer block moves. Outer slice plus adjacent inner slices. N is defined as the total number of slices to move. N may be omitted for 2 slices. Clockwise 90 degrees. NFW, NBW, NRW, NLW, NUW, NDW, counterclockwise 90 degrees. NFW prime, NBW prime, NRW prime, NLW prime, NUW prime, NDW prime, 180 degrees. NFW2, NBW2, NRW2, NLW2, NUW2, NDW2. Outer block term metric, OBTM, is defined as each move of the category's face moves and outer block moves is counted as 1 move. Each rotation is counted as 0 moves. Rotation for all N by N puzzles, clockwise 90 degrees. F in brackets or Z, B or Z, B in brackets or Z prime, R in brackets or X, L in brackets or X prime, U in brackets or Y, D in brackets or Y prime. Counterclockwise 90 degrees. F prime in brackets or Z prime, B prime in brackets or Z, R prime in brackets or X prime, L prime in brackets or X, U prime in brackets or Y prime, D prime in brackets or Y. 180 degrees. F2 in brackets or Z2, B2 in brackets or Z2, R2 in brackets or X2, L2 in brackets or X2, U2 in brackets or Y2, D2 in brackets or Y2. Notation for square one. Moves are applied with one of the 2 smallest surfaces on the equatorial slice on the left side of the front face. XY means turn the upper layer X times 30 degrees clockwise, turn the bottom layer Y times 30 degrees clockwise. X and Y must be integers from -5 to 6 and cannot be both equal to 0. A slash means turn the right half of the puzzle 180 degrees. Metric for square one, X, Y counts as 1 move, slash counts as 1 move. Notation for Megamix, scrambling notation only. Face moves clockwise 72 degrees, U upper face, counterclockwise 72 degrees, U prime upper face. Other moves are applied while keeping 3 pieces fixed at the top of the puzzle. Clockwise 144 degrees moves of the whole puzzle except for the slice of the top left three pieces, R++ vertical slices, D++ horizontal slices. Counterclockwise 144 degrees, move of whole puzzles except for the slice of the top left three pieces, R vertical slices, D horizontal slices. Notation for Megaminx: the puzzle is oriented with the bottom face completely horizontal and the front face facing the person who folds the pyraminx. Clockwise 120 degrees. U upper two layers, L left two layers, R right two layers, B back two layers, lowercase u upper vertex, lowercase l left vertex, lowercase r right vertex, lowercase b back vertex, counterclockwise 120 degrees. U prime upper two layers, L prime left two layers, R prime right two layers, B prime back two layers, U prime lowercase u prime upper vertex, lowercase l prime left vertex, lowercase r prime right vertex, lowercase b prime back vertex. Notation for clock: the puzzle is oriented with 12 o'clock on top and either side in front. Move pins up: UR top right, DR bottom right, DL bottom left, UL top left, U both top, R both right, D both bottom, L both left, all. Turn a wheel next to an up position pin and move all pins down afterwards. X plus X clockwise turns, X minus X counterclockwise turns. Turn around the puzzle so that the 12 o'clock stays on top and then move all pins down, Y2. Notation for skew: the puzzle is oriented with three faces fully visible with their upper faces on top. Clockwise 120 degrees R, the layer around the farthest visible bottom right vertex. U, the layer around the farthest visible upper vertex. L, the layer around the farthest visible bottom left vertex. B, the layer around the farthest non-visible back vertex. Counterclockwise 120 degrees, R prime, the layer around the farthest visible bottom right vertex, U prime, the layer around the farthest visible upper vertex, L prime, the layer around the farthest visible bottom left vertex, and B prime, the layer around the farthest non-visible back vertex. Article A. Speed solving. Speed solving attempts must abide by the following procedures. The organization team must enforce time limits for solves and/or rounds. The default time limit per solve is 10 minutes, though the organization team may announce a higher or lower time limit. Cumulative time limits may be enforced. For example, 3 solves with a cumulative time limit of 20 minutes, see Regulation A1A5. The time elapsed in a DNF result counts towards the cumulative time limit. For each round, any time limits must be announced before the round starts and should not be changed after it has begun. Changes must be made at the discretion of the WCA delegate, who must carefully consider the fairness of the change. The competitor must end each solve within a time limit. If the competitor reaches the time limit for a solve or round, the judge stops the solve immediately and records the result as DNF, exception multiple blindfolded solving, see Regulation H1B1. A solve is considered to meet the time limit if and only if the final result after any time penalties are applied is less than the time limit, exception multiple blindfolded solving, see Regulation H1B1. If the time limit for a solve is greater than 10 minutes, a stopwatch must be used for timekeeping. A stat map must be used in addition to the stopwatch exception for events without inspection where the competitor is expected to exceed 10 minutes. Use of the stat map is optional. If a time for the stat map timer is available, it is the original recorded time, otherwise the stopwatch time is the original recorded time. A competitor participating in the event must be able to fulfill the event's requirements, for example, know how to solve the puzzle. A competitor must not compete with the expectation of a DNF result or an intentionally poor result. Penalties, disqualification from the attempt DNF or disqualification from the event, see Regulation 2J at the discretion of the WCA delegate. Scrambling. When called for a round, the competitor submits a puzzle in its solved state to the scrambler. The competitor then waits in the competitor's area until they are called to compete. A scrambler scrambles the puzzle according to the regulations in Article 4. For Square 1, this organization team may enforce placing a thin object in the puzzle to prevent accidental moves being applied before the start of the attempt. If these objects are moves, this must be announced before the round starts. After the scrambler starts scrambling the puzzle, the competitor must not see the puzzle until the inspection phase starts. The scrambler places a cover over the scrambled puzzle that makes it impossible for any competitors or spectators to see any part of the puzzle. The cover remains over the puzzle until the start of the attempt. When taking a puzzle from the scrambler, the judge briefly inspects the puzzle to ensure thorough scrambling of the puzzle. The judge raises any concerns with the scrambler, who then conducts a detailed check. The organization team may require scramblers to take additional measures to make sure they have applied the correct scramble sequence, for example, signing the score sheet to affirm that they applied the correctly numbered scramble sequence and check that it matches the image, or using an additional person as a scramble checker. The judge places the puzzle onto the mat in an arbitrary orientation while ensuring that it remains completely covered. The competitor is not permitted to request a specific orientation, and the judge must not influence the orientation they place the puzzle on based on the mat, based on what they know or expect the puzzle state to be. Inspection. The competitor may inspect the puzzle at the start of each attempt. The competitor is allotted a maximum of 15 seconds to inspect the puzzle and start the solve. The judge then prepares the timer by turning it on and resetting if necessary. Separately, the judge also prepares a stopwatch for timing inspection. When the judge believes the competitor is ready, the judge asks "ready?" and the competitor must be ready to start the attempt within 1 minute of being called, else the competitor forfeits the attempt DNS at the discretion of the judge. The competitor starts the attempt by confirming that they are ready, and the judge uncovers the puzzle and starts timing the inspection. The competitor may pick up the puzzle during inspection. The competitor must not apply moves during inspection, penalty disqualification of the attempt DNF. If the parts of the puzzle are not fully aligned, then the competitor may align the faces so long as misalignments stay within the limits of 10F. The competitor may reset the timer before the start of the solve. For square one, if the use of a thin object inside the puzzle has been enforced by the organisation team, see Regulation A2B1, the competitor may remove the object from the puzzle during inspection. At the end of the inspection, the competitor places the puzzle on the mat in any orientation. Penalty for placing it outside the mat, time penalty 2 seconds. When 8 seconds of inspection have elapsed, the judge calls 8 seconds. When 12 seconds of inspection have elapsed, the judge calls 12 seconds. Starting the solve, the competitor uses their fingers to touch the elevated sensor surfaces of the timer. The competitor's palms must be facing down and located on the side of the timer that is closer to the competitor. Penalty, time penalty, plus 2 seconds. If the competitor must have no physical contact with the puzzle between the inspection period and the start of the solve. Penalty, time penalty, 2 plus 2 seconds. If a SnapMap timer is in use, the competitor starts the solve by confirming that the timer light is green and then removing their hands from the timer, thus starting the timer. The competitor must start the solve within 15 seconds of the start of inspection. Penalty, time penalty plus 2 seconds. The competitor must start the solve within 17 seconds of the start of inspection. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. If a stopwatch is in use, the judge starts the The judge starts the stopwatch as soon as the competitor starts the solve. Time penalties for starting the solve are cumulative. During the solve, while inspecting or solving the puzzle, the competitor must not communicate with anyone other than the judge or the WCA delegate. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. While inspecting or solving the puzzle, the competitor must not receive assistance from anyone or any object other than the surface. Also see Regulation 2I. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. Stopping the solve. The competitor stops the solve by releasing the puzzle and then stopping the timer. If a stopwatch is in use, the judge stops the stopwatch as soon as the competitor does this. When using a stopwatch as the only timer, the competitor ends the solve by releasing the puzzle and notifying the judge that they have stopped the solve. The judge stops the stopwatch as soon as the competitor does this. When using a stopwatch as the only timer, the competitor's default notification signal consists of releasing the puzzles from their hands and placing their hands on the surface with palms down. The competitor and the judge may agree on another appropriate notification before the start of the attempt. The competitor is responsible for stopping the StatMap timer correctly. If the timer stops before the end of the solve and the timer shows a time strictly below 0.06 seconds, then the attempt is replaced by an extra attempt. A competitor forfeits the right to the additional attempt if the WCA delegate determines that the timer was stopped deliberately. If the timer stops before the end of the solve and displays a time of 0.06 seconds or higher, then the attempt is disqualified, DNF. Exception: if the competitor can demonstrate that the timer malfunctioned, then they may receive an extra attempt at the discretion of the WCA delegate. The competitor must fully release the puzzle before stopping the timer. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. Exception: if no moves have been applied after stopping the timer and before releasing the puzzle, the time penalty 2 plus 2 seconds may be assigned instead at the discretion of the judge. The competitor must stop the timer using both hands placed flat on the sensors with palms down. Penalty time penalty plus 2 seconds. After releasing the puzzle, the competitor must not touch or move the puzzle until the judge has inspected the puzzle. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. Exception: if no moves have been applied, a time penalty plus 2 seconds may be assigned instead at the discretion of the judge. The competitor must not reset the timer until the judge has recorded the result on the score sheet. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt, DNF at the discretion of the judge. If the competitor resets the timer before the result has been completely recorded, the judge must not write down the result from memory or from video or photographic evidence and must disqualify the attempt instead, DNF. The judge determines whether the puzzle is solved. They must not make moves or align faces when examining the puzzle. Exception for clock. The judge will usually need to pick up the puzzle to verify both faces. In case of a dispute, moves or alignments must not be applied to the puzzle before the dispute is resolved. Time penalties for stopping the solve are cumulative. Recording results. The judge tells the competitor the result. If the judge finds that the puzzle is solved, they call OK. If the judge assigns any penalty, they call penalty. If the result is DNF, the judge calls DNF. The judge records the result on a scoresheet and signs next to the result to acknowledge that the result is correct, complete, properly formatted, and clearly readable. If the penalties are applied, the judge records the original recorded times displayed on the timer along with any penalties. The format should be x plus t plus y equals f, where x represents the sum of the time penalty before starting the solve, t represents the time displayed on the timer, the original recorded time, y represents the sum of time penalties during or after the solve, and f represents the final result. For example, 2 plus 17.65 plus 2 equals 21.65. If x and or y is 0, the zero terms are omitted. For example, 17.65 plus 2 equals 19.65. The competitor must check the recorded result and sign or initial the scoresheet to acknowledge that the result is correct, complete, properly formatted, and clearly readable. This finishes the attempt. If the competitor or the judge refuses to accept and sign the scoresheet, the WCA delegate must resolve this dispute. If the competitor signs or otherwise marks an attempt before they've begun it, they forfeit attempt and the result will be considered DNS. If the competitor signs or otherwise marks an attempt before starting the event, but before the judge has finished recording the result, the attempt will be considered unfinished DNF. The competitor should not assign an attempt before the judge has recorded and signed the attempt. The competitor is ultimately responsible for ensuring that they and the judge have signed the attempt. If an attempt is found to be missing one or both signatures after the judge has delivered the scoresheet to the score taker, it will be considered unfinished DNF. See Regulation A7F. When a competitor's scoresheet for a round is complete, the judge delivers the scoresheet to the score taker. At the discretion of the WCA delegate, an incident or penalty caused by a new competitor's inexperience may be replaced with an extra attempt. Article B. Blindfolded solving. Standard speed solving procedures as followed as described in Article A, speed solving. Additional regulations that supersede the corresponding procedures in Article A are described below. There is no inspection period. The competitor supplies their own blindfold. Starting the attempt. The judge resets the timer and asks ready, as in A3B1. The competitor must be ready to start the attempt within 1 minute of being called, else the competitor forfeits the event DNS at the discretion of the judge. The competitor uses their fingers to touch the elevated sensor surfaces of the timer. The competitor's palms must be facing down and located on the side of the timer that's closest to them. Penalty plus 2 seconds. The competitor must have no physical contact with the puzzle before the start of the attempt. Penalty plus 2 seconds. The competitor must starts the attempt by removing their hands from the timer, thus starting the timer. This also starts the solve. The competitor removes the cover from the puzzle after starting the timer. If a stopwatch is in use in addition to a StatMat timer, the judge starts the stopwatch as soon as the competitor starts to solve. If a stopwatch is in use as the only timer, the competitor places their hands on the table instead of a StatMat timer. After confirming that they are ready, the competitor starts the solve by lifting the cover. The judge starts the stopwatch as soon as the competitor starts the solve. Memorization phase. The competitor may pick up the puzzle during the memorization phase. The competitor must not make physical notes, penalty, disqualification of the attempt. The competitor must not apply moves to the puzzle during the memorization phase. Penalty is disqualification of the attempt. Blindfolded phase. The competitor dons the blindfold to start the blindfolded phase. The competitor must not apply moves to the puzzle before they have fully donned the blindfold. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt. The judge must ensure that there is an opaque object between the competitor's face and the puzzle while the competitor is solving. In all cases, the competitor should wear the blindfold, such that their view of the puzzle would still clearly be blocked if the opaque object were not in the way. By default, the judge should place the object, for example a sheet of paper or cardboard, between the competitor and the puzzle while the competitor is wearing the blindfold. If the judge and competitor agree beforehand, the competitor may choose to place the puzzle behind a suitable object, for example a music stand, the surface of the table, by themselves during the blindfolded phase. The competitor must not look at the puzzle at any point during the blindfolded phase. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt DNF. Until the competitor applies the first move to the puzzle, they may remove the blindfold to return to the memorization phase. Stopping the solve. When using the start map timer, the competitor just stops the solve by releasing the puzzle and then stopping the timer. When using a stopwatch, the competitor stops the solve by placing the puzzle back onto the surface and notifying the judge that they are stopping the solve. At that moment, the judge stops the timer. If the competitor is not touching the puzzle, they may remove the blindfold so long as before they stop the timer. They must not touch the puzzle until the end of the attempt. Penalty for touching the puzzle is disqualification of the attempt, DNF. Article C, one-handed solving. Standard speed solving procedures are followed as described in Article A, speed solving. Additional regulations that supersede the corresponding procedures in Article A are described below. During the solve, the competitor must use only one hand to operate the puzzle. Penalty disqualification of the attempt. If a puzzle defect occurs and the competitor chooses to repair it, they must repair it using only the solving hand. Penalty disqualification of the attempt. If other body parts of the competitor come in contact with the puzzles or parts of the competition without of the puzzle without competitor's intention, without implying move, this is not considered operating the puzzle at the discretion of the judge. During the solve, once a competitor operates the puzzle with one hand, they must not operate the puzzle with the other hand. Penalty is disqualification of the attempt. Article D, solving with feet. Standard speed solving procedures are followed as described in Article A, speed solving. Additional regulations that supersede the corresponding procedures in Article A are described below. During the attempt, the competitor must sit in a chair, sit on the surface, or stand. During the solve, the competitor must use only their feet and the surface to operate the puzzle. Penalty disqualification of the attempt. Starting the solve, the competitor places the feet onto the timer sensors. The competitor removes their feet from the timer sensors to start the solve. Stopping the solve, the competitor stops the timer by placing their feet onto the timer sensors. Article E, fewest move solving. Procedure for fewest move solving. The judge distributes a scramble sequence to all competitors. The judge then starts the stopwatch and calls go. All competitors have a total time limit of 60 minutes to devise a solution. The judge should call 5 minutes remaining at 55 minutes and must call stop at 60 minutes. At 60 minutes, each competitor must give the judge a legibly written solution with the competitor's name using the notation defined for outer block term metric described in Regulation 12A. Penalty disqualification of the attempt. The length of the solution is calculated in outer block term metric. See Regulation 12A. The competitor is permitted a maximum solution length of 80 moves and rotations. The competitor's solution must not be directly derived from any part of the scramble sequence. Penalty disqualification of the attempt at the discretion of the WCA delegate. The WCA delegate may ask the competitor to explain the purpose of each move in their solution irrespective of scrambling algorithm. If the competitor cannot give a valid explanation, the attempt is disqualified. The competitor may use the following objects during the attempt. Penalty for using unauthorized objects, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. Paper and pens, both supplied by judge, 3x3x3 cubes, at most 3 self-supplied as described in Article 3. Stickers, self-supplied, stopwatch or watch self-supplied for keeping track of the elapsed time if it is approved by the WCA delegate. Article F, clock solving. Standard speed solving procedures are followed as described in Article A, speed solving. Additional regulations that supersede the corresponding procedures in Article A are described below. The judge places the scrambled puzzle on the mat in a standing position. At the end of the inspection period, the competitor places the puzzle in a standing position. Penalty disqualification of the attempt. The competitor must not change the positions of any pins from their scrambled positions before the start of the solve. Penalty disqualification of the attempt. Article H, multiple blindfolded solving. Standard blind solving procedures as followed as described in Article B, blindfolded solving. Additional regulations that supersede the corresponding procedures in Article B are described below. Before an attempt, the competitor must submit to the organization team the number of puzzles, at least 2, they wish to attempt. A competitor is not permitted to change the number of puzzles after submitting their number to the organization team. The competitor may request to keep their submission private until all competitors have submitted their numbers. Once all competitors have reported their numbers, the information becomes public. For instance, for example, a competitor may ask for the numbers of any other competitors before starting their attempt. Before the attempt, the scrambled puzzles must be placed on the table in arbitrary orientation while ensuring that they remain completely covered. The puzzles should be arranged in shape as square as possible. For example, 8 puzzles should be arranged in two rows of 3 puzzles and 1 row of 2 puzzles. If a competitor is attempting fewer than 6 puzzles, they are allotted a time limit of 10 minutes times the number of puzzles in the attempt, else the time limit is 60 minutes. The competitor may signal the end of the attempt at any time. If and when the time limit is reached, the judge stops the attempt and the attempt is then scored. The time limit for the attempt counts as the original recorded time. Time penalties for the Time penalties for the puzzles of the attempt are cumulative. Article Z. Optional regulations. Organizational teams may adopt optional regulations to facilitate the administration of the competition at the discretion of the WCA board. The organization team may require competitors to submit puzzles during registration. The organization team may limit the number of events per competitor. The organization team may select competitors who directly qualify for certain rounds of certain events based on the results of specific previous competitions. The organization team may limit the number of competitors per event or per competition on either a first-come, first-served basis or based upon qualification results or rankings in the WCA World Rankings or a previously announced calendar date. If the number of competitors per event or per competition is limited, the following regulations apply. If the limit for a competition or an event is reached before the competition, the organization team must not accept on-site registrations for the competition or the event. Competitor limits should be announced together with the competition. Any changes to competitor limits are at the discretion of the WCA board. If there is more than one registration period, the organization team must announce each additional registration period at least 48 hours before it starts. The organization team may prohibit competitors from participating in specific combinations of events. That took 48 minutes, 55 seconds, 0.88. And I need a drink. Let's see. Does display capture work? I don't think this works. Add display capture. No. Oh well. I know. I'm gonna be really ghetto. Look, 48, 55.884. There we go. That'll do.